The marble floors of Stratton and Chase glistened like polished ice beneath the morning sun. Executives brushed past each other in crisp suits, murmuring into Bluetooth headsets, their pace precise, their presence intimidating. And then she walked in, small, silent, and utterly out of place. Ava Morgan, barely 8 years old, stood at the front desk clutching a navy blue briefcase almost as large as her torso. Her curls were neatly braided, her shoes freshly shined. But it wasn't her appearance that unsettled the receptionist. It was her certainty. "Sweetheart," the woman at the front desk said without looking up, fingers clacking away at her keyboard. "Daycare isn't on this floor. You might be lost." Ava adjusted the strap of her backpack, then spoke with the calm confidence of someone twice her age. "I have a 9 a.m. interview with Mr. Malcolm Reed, Director of Operations." That stopped the typing. The receptionist's eyes rose, confused. Her expression flickered, first annoyance, then disbelief. "You're here to interview. For what role exactly?" "Senior Budget Analyst," Ava replied. "2 nearby interns." Paused mid-conversation. A man in a gray blazer turned his head slightly. The front lobby, moments ago a blur of movement, seemed to slow. "My mother, Dana Morgan, prepared for this interview for months," Ava added, lifting the briefcase to the desk with both hands. "She was admitted to County General last night. Pneumonia. She asked me to deliver this in her place." For the first time, the receptionist noticed the girl's eyes, sharp, observant, and unflinching. The marble lobby, built to impress titans, had never felt so uneasy. The briefcase sat on the marble counter like a quiet rebellion. The receptionist finally stood, eyes narrowing as she tried to decode what exactly was happening. "You're saying your mother sent you to interview?" Ava nodded once. "She wanted you to have her portfolio. She worked on it for 3 months. She asked me to make sure it reached Mr. Reed today." The woman behind the desk leaned in slightly, tone softening, but still coated in disbelief. "Honey, I don't know what game you're playing, but she's not playing." The voice came from behind the elevator doors as they slid open. With a mechanical chime, Malcolm Reed, towering and impeccably dressed, stepped out with the composed intensity of a man used to being obeyed. CEO of Stratton and Chase, known for his brutal efficiency and a reputation for upholding standards. Though those closest to the hiring floor knew what that really meant, his steel gray eyes scanned the scene. His expression gave away nothing. "What's the issue, Evelyn?" The receptionist stepped aside. "Sir, this girl says she's here to interview on behalf of her mother." Malcolm's gaze settled on Ava. His jaw tightened, not in confusion, but irritation. "And what's your name?" he asked, arms folded. "Ava Morgan." "Morgan?" His brow arched. "Dana Morgan? She applied for the analyst position, didn't she? Background in public finance. Local state projects." "Yes, sir," Ava said, opening the briefcase. She prepared a full strategic analysis on department inefficiencies. She stayed up all night finalizing it. But she collapsed yesterday and was admitted to the hospital. "And so, she sent you." She said talent speaks for itself. Ava answered, lifting out a spiral-bound report with color-coded tabs. "And that people with vision don't need to see a resume before recognizing value." For a moment, Reed said nothing. He took the document but didn't open it. "That's a noble sentiment," he said, voice clipped. "But you understand why this is unusual." Ava didn't flinch. Unusual isn't the same as unqualified. A few employees had gathered behind the lobby pillars, pretending to scroll their phones. A junior HR associate subtly turned her badge around to avoid being recognized as she leaned in to listen. Reed looked at the first page of the portfolio. His fingers paused on a projected cost savings model. The numbers were sound, impressive, even, but his tone remained impassive. "Your mother should have postponed. She didn't have the luxury." Ava's voice didn't rise, but there was weight in her words. "She's applied to 12 positions in the last year. Every time, the interview ended in a "we'll get back to you." She thought this company might be different. Reed's eyes flicked up. "This company has standards. We don't compromise them for personal emergencies." "Are those standards measurable?" Ava asked. Because if so, her qualifications meet or exceed them. And if not, she let the sentence dangle. Something shifted in Reed's posture. He was no longer curious. He was irritated. "You're precocious," he said flatly. "But this isn't a school project." "No," Ava said. It's a business proposal, and ignoring it would be a financial mistake. Whispers rippled through the lobby. Evelyn, the receptionist, glanced nervously at the security camera in the ceiling. Reed's face tightened. He had built his success on dominance, precision, and never being challenged, especially not by an 8-year-old. But what disturbed him most wasn't Ava's tone. It was her control. The way she didn't ask for permission to be heard. She assumed her voice mattered. "You've delivered the file." "That's enough," he said. Ava didn't move. "She told me to stay until someone important actually read it." Reed's knuckles tightened around the binder. Across the room, an African-American manager paused near the security desk, his expression unreadable in that moment. Something unspoken began to stir beneath the polished surface of Stratton and Chase. And it was far more dangerous than one little girl with a briefcase. Malcolm Reed closed the binder and slid it across the desk with mechanical precision. His eyes lingered on the cover page for a second too long before he leaned back in his leather chair. "Interesting models," he said with measured indifference. "Creative, even. But this," he gestured to the briefcase Ava had set on the table, "isn't how things work here." Ava didn't blink. "You mean decisions aren't based on good data?" Reed gave a tight smile, one he often used in shareholder meetings when someone asked uncomfortable questions. "Decisions," he said, "are based on patterns of behavior, presentation, professionalism." "Then let's look at patterns," Ava said, pulling another folder from her backpack. Reed's expression froze. "Excuse me." She opened the file, revealing a spreadsheet of applicant data, names, qualifications, rejection dates. "My mother noticed them first. She started keeping track. We cross-referenced LinkedIn profiles with public job listings and internal records." Her finger traced down a column labeled Interview Outcome. Dozens of highly qualified candidates. All rejected. Most had one thing in common. Ava let the silence hang. Reed didn't answer. From the hallway outside his office, Patricia Owens, director of learning and development and one of the company's few black executives, passed slowly, eyes narrowing as she caught the edge of the conversation. She paused at the water dispenser, phone in hand, but didn't drink. Reed's voice sharpened. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything," Ava said calmly. "I'm just sharing the same data we were told you value so much. Objective, transparent, unbiased." She tapped one entry. Harold Du Bois, MBA, 6 years of strategic finance. Rejected after a 10-minute phone screen. Reed shifted in his chair. "This is speculative." "No," Ava said. "It's systemic." His nostrils flared. "And what do you propose we do? Rewrite 5 years of hiring decisions based on a child's hobby project?" "It's not a hobby," Ava replied, voice firm. "It's what happens when someone smart is ignored long enough that they have to build their own case file." A few feet outside the glass office walls, James Turner from Internal Audit stood just within earshot. His eyes flicked toward Patricia, who gave a subtle nod. Something silent passed between them. Reed turned toward the window, the city skyline behind him now framed like a painting of control. "You don't understand the complexity of corporate hiring." "I understand metrics," Ava said. "I understand trends. I understand when people say culture fit, they often mean looks like me, talks like me, makes me comfortable." She paused. "My mother never did that." The sentence landed with surgical precision. Flashback ***, just 3 weeks earlier. Dana Morgan sat at the kitchen table with a whiteboard full of figures and notes. Her breath shallow from coughing, but her mind sharp. Ava sat across from her, learning every chart, every flaw in Stratton and Chase's budget allocations. "This isn't just about us," Dana had said between sips of warm tea. "This is about every person they smiled at and then pushed out the back door." Back in the office, Reed cleared his throat. "If your mother had concerns, she should have addressed them through proper channels." "She tried," Ava said quietly. "Your team ghosted her." Another silence. Evelyn, the receptionist, stood just outside the office now, not even pretending to work. Her face had changed, from dismissive to uneasy. "You've made your point," Reed said, standing. "You've delivered your file. You can go." Ava did not move. "There's something else," she said, lifting her eyes. "Something I haven't shown you yet." Reed sighed. "Let me guess. Another spreadsheet?" "No." She reached into her backpack and removed a smaller binder. "These are internal communications." His fingers twitched. "Meeting notes, Email threads, chat transcripts. Nothing public. Nothing we should have. But we do. Reed's voice dropped. That's impossible. Is it? Ava didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The quietness made it land harder. Reed stepped forward slowly. How did you get this? Ava held up the binder but didn't hand it to him. You should ask Patricia Owens, she said. And maybe James Turner, too. Reed's head snapped toward the hallway. Patricia had stepped closer, her presence no longer subtle. Her expression unreadable, but her stance unflinching. You coordinated this, Reed muttered, trying to regain footing. Ava tilted her head. You built a system. We just looked under the floorboards. He reached for the binder. She pulled it back. Not yet, she said. Not until you understand what you're holding. This isn't about one candidate anymore. It's about your entire leadership model. From the hallway, more employees had gathered, some pretending to read reports, others just standing, watching. Reed's composure cracked for the first time. I've built this company for 20 years, he said. You think you can tear it apart in one afternoon? Ava looked around the office. No, you've done that over 5 years. We just collected the receipts. Reed stepped back, slowly sinking into his chair. The CEO's office, once a fortress, now felt like a transparent cage. I don't know what you're after, he muttered. Ava finally handed over the second binder. We're after the truth, she said. And you should know. Her eyes met his, unwavering. We know more than you think. Malcolm Reed stared at the open binder in his hands, his thumb twitching over the corner of a page he wasn't reading. The spreadsheets were too clean, too detailed. The headers were dated, categorized, and annotated in a way that couldn't have come from a child, or at least not one without serious guidance. This doesn't prove anything, he said, voice low. Ava folded her hands neatly on the table. It proves everything you hoped no one would ever connect. She reached into her backpack again. A third folder, smaller, more dangerous, labeled in precise handwriting. Confidential correspondence. Malcolm didn't need to open it to feel the noose tightening. You've made your point, he said. But no board, no court, is going to take the word of a child. He stopped. Across the room, the door opened with a quiet, professional knock. I'm not a child, said the man who stepped in. And I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. Malcolm's eyes darted to the man's ID badge. Dr. Roberto Martinez, civil rights attorney. He carried no briefcase this time, just a small leather portfolio and the air of someone who had already won. I've been authorized to speak on behalf of Ms. Dana Morgan and her daughter, he said, taking a seat beside Ava. What we have, Mr. Reed, is not opinion. It's not outrage. It's hard evidence of discriminatory hiring practices that violate multiple federal statutes. You're bluffing, Malcolm said, but the tremble in his tone betrayed him. Dr. Martinez opened the portfolio. Internal memos encouraging the maintenance of cultural consistency in leadership teams. Emails rewarding hiring managers for homogeneity. Audio recordings of closed-door meetings where candidates were filtered by fit, not skill. Need I continue? Malcolm's face drained of color. You don't have the legal right. We do, Martinez cut in. Systematic discrimination is not protected by internal policy, and whistleblower protections cover every one of the employees who helped bring this forward. The office door opened again, this time without a knock. Patricia Owens stepped inside, followed by James Turner from finance and Michael Chow from legal compliance. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence was the final confirmation. This wasn't an ambush. It was an orchestrated intervention. You brought in my own staff, Malcolm said, voice rising. You turned my people against me? You turned them against yourself, Patricia replied, her tone calm but sharp. We were just done watching. Malcolm's phone buzzed furiously on the desk. Mrs. Ellison's voice came through the speaker in a hushed panic. Sir, Channel 9, Channel 12, and the Tribune are in the lobby. They say there's a scheduled press conference at noon. Do you want me to call security? No, Malcolm croaked. Ava's eyes didn't leave him. My mother thought transparency might be the best way forward, she said softly. Dr. Martinez pushed a manila envelope across the desk. Filed this morning. Class action. 57. Plaintiffs and counting. Claims include racial discrimination, retaliation, and hostile workplace violations. Your company's internal bonuses for maintaining racial uniformity, Michael Chow added quietly, were the final nail. You're trying to ruin me, Malcolm muttered. No, Martinez corrected. You did that yourself. We're just making sure the debris lands where it belongs. Malcolm stood suddenly, knocking his chair into the wall. This is blackmail. Ava didn't flinch. Blackmail is when someone asks for something in exchange for silence. We're asking for fairness in broad daylight. The words hit harder than any raised voice. The CEO who once ruled boardrooms with a glance was now pacing behind his desk like a caged animal. You want money? He barked. A payoff. Ava stood now, slowly, deliberately. She reached into her backpack one last time and pulled out a single sheet of paper. No, we want 3 things. She walked to the edge of the desk and laid the paper down. Hire my mother. Implement fair and transparent hiring reforms. Compensate the victims. Malcolm stared at the list. It was short, precise. No rage. No drama. Just facts. And if I don't. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. Then you can walk downstairs in 15 minutes and explain to a room full of cameras why your company made $280 million in profit last year, but couldn't find space for a single qualified black executive. The room was quiet again. Outside, the sound of elevator chimes and murmuring reporters grew louder. Ava returned to her seat and crossed her legs the way she'd seen her mother do in meetings. You don't have to fall, Mr. Reed, she said. You can step down gracefully. Or be pushed. The air inside the office had shifted, heavier now. Tighter. Malcolm Reed no longer sat behind his mahogany desk like a titan. He stood at its edge, fingers clutching the surface as if it were the last thing anchoring him to power. Outside, the rumble of press cameras and murmurs from the building lobby filtered in through the high-rise windows. Below them, the world was watching. Let's be reasonable, Malcolm said, voice cracking under the weight of desperation. I can hire her. I'll even issue a formal apology. But compensating 57 people? Reforming policy overnight? That's unrealistic. You were never expected to do it overnight, Dr. Martinez replied evenly, flipping open a binder-marked settlement proposal. Just immediately, he slid the binder across the desk. Pages inside were already signed by attorneys representing the plaintiffs. Only Malcolm's signature remained. $200,000 in damages per victim, Dr. Martinez explained, in full public acknowledgement of the practices used to filter candidates by race, gender, and socioeconomic background. An external audit will oversee compliance for the next 3 years. Malcolm's eyes flicked to Ava. She hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. She was calm, but not passive, watchful, unshakable. You want me to gut my company in public? No, Ava said. We want you to fix what you broke, publicly. A knock came at the door. Patricia Owens entered again, this time with 3 more employees. Sandra from accounting, James from logistics, Kelvin from IT. All black, all quiet, all standing with arms crossed, eyes locked on the man who once silenced them with boardroom politics and polished microaggressions. You lied to us, Patricia said, walking forward slowly. You told us we didn't make the cut, that we just weren't a fit. But the truth is, we were filtered out before our resumes were even reviewed. Patricia, please, no. This is our time now. The silence that followed was sacred, not awkward, not theatrical. It was the silence of years of restraint finally breaking open. Malcolm slumped into his chair. Why didn't any of you say anything sooner? Sandra's voice was soft, but steady. Because we knew it wouldn't matter. Until today. His hands trembled. And what about the company? What about the board? My reputation. Ava finally rose, not with triumph, but with purpose. You built your reputation on exclusion, she said. You perfected the art of smiling while denying opportunity. This isn't about tearing you down. Malcolm looked up, confusion flickering in his expression. It's not, he asked, almost childlike. No, Ava said gently. It's not revenge. It's justice. Her voice didn't rise, but it echoed through the room like a verdict. And in that moment, something inside Malcolm cracked. Not just fear, not just resistance, but recognition. The weight of what he'd done wasn't theoretical anymore. It had faces, names, eyes staring back at him without anger, but with unwavering resolve. He tried, but no words followed. "What do you really want from me?" he whispered. "Doctor." Martinez closed the binder and tapped it with one finger. "We already told you. Admit the wrong. Correct the systems. Repair the harm. You can walk out of this a man who changed, or one who had to be changed." Malcolm's breath was shallow. From the hallway, the hum of live broadcast equipment began to rise. Reporters were in place, cameras rolling. Downstairs, the board had convened. He looked around the room again. Patricia, Sandra, James, Kelvin. Even his own legal advisor now stood in the doorway, arms folded, not stopping the process, only observing it. This was not an ambush. It was accountability, and it had been waiting for years. "I accept the terms," Malcolm said. Almost inaudibly, Ava gave a single nod. "Doctor." Martinez opened his pen. "Then let's begin." Malcolm Reed's signature hit the paper like the sound of surrender. The air inside the office stood still, as if even the walls knew a turning point had just been recorded into history. "Doctor." Martinez quietly slid the agreement back into his briefcase, eyes fixed on Malcolm, not with malice, but with the cold certainty of a man who had done this before. Behind him, Ava slipped the small tablet into her backpack. The press would get their headline. The board would get their damage control. But the victory? That belonged to her mother. Minutes later, a soft knock came at the office door. The receptionist peeked in. "There's a woman downstairs, says she's Claudia Lang. She's here to pick up her daughter." Ava's face lit up. "That's her," she said, springing to her feet with the first childlike gesture she'd shown all day. When Claudia Lang walked into that office, she didn't wear expensive clothes or a sharp designer blazer. She wore resolve, humility, the quiet dignity of someone who had survived rejection after rejection and still stood tall. "Mr. Reed," she said, her voice calm but steel-lined. "I believe you've been expecting me." Malcolm couldn't meet her eyes. "I have. Welcome to Halston and Gray, Director of Diversity and Inclusion." Ava took her mother's hand, and together they stepped out into the hallway, not as guests, not as underdogs, but as the architects of a new beginning. In the hours that followed, news broke like a dam. Corporate giant overhauled by 9-year-old's brave stand. Diversity revolution sparked by one family's fight for fairness. Clips of Ava walking through the marble lobby, backpack swinging, flanked by press and employees, went viral within minutes. Hashtags trended globally. Interviews were requested. Think pieces were written. Late-night hosts called her a tiny titan. But Ava? She didn't need validation. She had something better. Results. Claudia Lang's first initiative was the Equity Access Program, a rigorous restructuring of Halston and Gray's hiring model. Within 6 months, the company's diversity numbers had doubled. Anonymous review systems replaced traditional resume filters. Community mentorship programs were launched. And most importantly, 57 candidates, previously turned away, were now compensated and given the resources to pursue new futures. Some returned to Halston and Gray. Others found roles at top-tier firms inspired by the case. A few launched startups with their settlement money. One even began teaching a class on corporate ethics. Inside the company, the shift was seismic. Patricia Owens was promoted to Vice President of People and Culture, and her first act was forming an internal equity council led by employees who had once been overlooked. And Malcolm Reed. The board moved swiftly, first stripping his executive authority, then quietly removing him from the company altogether. He retained an honorary title, a hollow gesture meant to protect shareholders from panic. But in truth, his era had ended the moment Ava walked into the building. A year later, the halls of Halston and Gray looked different. More color, more laughter, more ideas flowing from places that had once been kept in the shadows. Ava now attended an elite private school, funded by the company's new scholarship program for employees' children. But she still came to her mother's office after school every Thursday, tucking into her usual corner with a notebook, a laptop, and questions about justice and systems and how to fix broken things. That afternoon, a group of college interns arrived for a leadership tour. They were told they'd be meeting someone special. Expecting a CEO or an executive in heels, they were surprised to find Ava seated cross-legged by a window, eating dried mango, and reading a book about constitutional law. One of the interns leaned in. "If you could tell young people facing injustice one thing," she asked, "what would it be?" Ava smiled. "Not the rehearsed, PR-friendly smile people had come to expect from child prodigies, but the kind that comes from knowing you've lived your truth. Never underestimate your voice. She said, sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody saw coming. That night, as Claudia closed her laptop after a long day of onboarding new hires, she looked over at Ava, still scribbling ideas in a notebook with that same quiet intensity. "What are you working on now?" she asked. Ava glanced up, eyes sparkling. "A program to teach kids about their rights, starting with public schools." Claudia grinned. "Of course you are." And just like that, they returned to their quiet rhythm. Two women, one grown and one growing, bound not just by blood, but by belief that when you meet injustice with intelligence, dignity, and courage, even the coldest institutions can be forced to change. Because sometimes justice doesn't march in with banners. Sometimes it walks in wearing a backpack.